Morning everyone. So we're on to part 2 of chapter 13 of the Dreamsnatchers. Remember, she's in the cavey dungeon kind of thing with Alfie. Moll narrowed her eyes but said nothing. Lost your voice? Sneered Alfie. A button-sized idiot, that's what you are, and one that dealt me in the pit. You and that stupid pony. Moll remained silent, her eyes hot and dark. No one insulted Jinx. The match faded. Alfie sprang up, lighting another one against the box. Come on, then, Moll said evenly, tossing her hair over her shoulder, but her pulse was racing inside. Where was Griff and Oak? But would the camp even come for her after she'd shut them out? She needed time to think, time to come up with a plan. I'll fight my way out, past you, past Skull, past the whole rotting lot of you, she hissed. Alfie raised his eyebrows. They won't kill you, if that's what you're frightened about. Moll spat. I'm not frightened. They're waiting for the beast too, like the bone murmur says, Alfie paused. So when the wildcat comes for you and they find out your name, they'll kill you both. Got to be at the same time or the bone murmur jumps to another child, another beast. But now Skull knows who you both are. This is his chance, and he won't let it jump. He glanced down at the bones. See them? Animals. That's Skull's sacrifices for his dream snatch. The bones wind up here. Moll's gut twisted into a knot. Shut up! And then she added under her breath, you rotted polecat dipped in a cow dung. Alfie leant forward, but his fists weren't raised. I think you're forgetting something. The light from the match danced inside the pit. I've got the bone reading from inside your talisman. Moll's body stiffened. Why didn't you just give it to Skull? Her voice was level, but her heart was pounding. If Alfie had the bone reading, there was still a chance she could find the amulets before Skull killed her. Alfie wiped his nose and straightened himself up. Because Skull isn't after the amulets. He's after you and your wildcat. But I've heard the gang talk about them. I know these amulets will be worth a small fortune. And I'm going to find them for me so I can sell them and get as far away from here as possible. Moll's heart skipped a beat. Alfie pulled the bone fragments from his pocket and turned them over in his hands. Dew Hill Maiden. There was something else in his pocket, something Moll had glimpsed earlier. She'd bide her time on that, though. She had to be sly. She raised her eyebrows. And why would I help you? Alfie smiled and then he straightened his cap. Because I know what the bone reading means, and it's got nothing to do with the farm you and your pal were mumbling about back at the river. He raised an eyebrow. I heard you when Gobbler was cutting your cob free. Moll's heart raced faster still. He may have heard her and Siddy talking, but he hadn't seen Griff. She reached out to grab the bones, but Alfie leapt back and the match faded. Who are you? Moll said into the darkness. Never you mind. But I don't need Skull or his wretched dark magic. I'm only interested in the amulets, and once I've sold them, everything will be better. Moll squinted at him. You mean you'll have enough money to fend for yourself? Without Skull? Alfie hesitated for a moment, fiddling with his feather earring. Yeah. It was only a second's hesitation, but Moll knew in that moment that the amulets meant more to Alfie than food and shelter. He was after them for another reason. She was sure of it. Alfie lit another match from his tin and looked Moll squarely in the eye. I know what the bone reading means, and I know how to escape Skull's camp. You need me if you're going to survive this. Moll looked around at the pit. You're burping out lies. Well, what if I'm not? Moll frowned. If you know all of this, why do you need my help? Because I found something out last night, and I think it's likely bound up with your bone reading and your amulets. He looked away. Only I can't read well, so I don't understand it at all. I reckon you can help because you've been lettered up all fancy at your camp. Moll threw him a savage look. How do you know about that? Because I've been in Skull's gang twice. So I've been in Skull's gang since I was a child, and from time to time I watched your camp from the trees, picked up this and that, enough to get by. Moll stared at Alfie. He had been sneaking around Oak's camp unnoticed to learn letters. You're no gypsy, are you? Alfie met her bright, fierce eyes. He straightened himself up. I want to work with you to get the amulets. Once we find them, we sell them, and we each take half the profits. Moll couldn't believe what she was hearing. She knew next to nothing about these amulets. But she felt one thing clear and true. They weren't things you could just sell, and splitting the money honestly, Alfie was bound to cut and run. But this was her only chance. She could go along with him, pretending to agree to sell the amulets, while he helped her get away. Then she'd try and somehow send a signal to Oak and her camp. She looked over at Alfie, who was smiling slyly. What if he was tricking her so that he could pass on information to Skull? But she'd seen the hatred in his eyes at the mention of the witch doctor. If Alfie was keeping secrets from her, Moll got the feeling it was about why he wanted those amulets so badly. She held out her hands and looked Alfie in the eye. The best thing to do when you're telling a lie. Deal, she replied evenly. Alfie shook her hand. Deal? Moll looked down at the rope which bound her. Untie me, please. Alfie held out another lit match. Hold this. Moll flinched with annoyance that she'd have to cooperate with the very person who'd kidnapped her from the ancient wood. Please? Alfie mumbled. Reluctantly, Moll took the match and Alfie drew a penknife from his rusted tin. Moll stiffened so he was armed. I'm only untying you because we need to work together. He sawed his knife through the rope, then glanced quickly at the grate covering the pit's opening. If they don't come down, grab the rope and wind it around your hands. I don't want any questions from them, though. Moll looked at his split lip and nodded. She reached over for the flask, took a big swig of water, then tore off a lump of stale bread and chewed it hard. The match faded, but when Alfie lit another, Moll saw that his eyes were shining, and the pocket of his shorts no longer bulged. He was holding something, a roll of leather. A night breeze sifted in through the grate, and Moll could almost hear it slipping inside the roll in tiny whispers. Her initials stared back at her in black, but they hadn't been written in ink, they'd been burned on. Alfie held out the roll of leather in front of Moll. Her mouth widened and her heart fluttered as she traced the words with her finger. For MP, from the maiden. And that is the end of your chapter. I will see you on Monday. Have a lovely weekend. Hope the weather stays nice. Well, gets nice, I should say. Bye-bye.